you thinking about moving to Dallas, Texas, but you don't know if you should live in the suburb where it's more quiet, more peaceful, or you should move to the city because you're tempted by all the hustle and bustle, all the entertainment, so many more things to do there, a lot of excitement. Well, I'm gonna share with you the pros and cons of the suburbs as well as the pros and cons of the city life, and make sure to stick to the very end because by the end of the video, you're gonna know which lifestyle fits you best. So let's get right to it. Before I share with you the pros and cons, as for me, I am more of a city. I love the city. I love the hustle. I love the bustle. I love the busyness of life. I don't like suburbs. I'm living in a suburb right now, but I don't like it. I love city life. But what about you? Are you more of like a city or are you more of a suburb? Go ahead and comment below and kind of get a feel of what you guys like. So the very first pro of living in the big city, the city of Dallas, has to do with its entertainment. Now, I'm sure you know that when it comes with the city like downtown LA, downtown New York, downtown Chicago, wherever downtown you go, there are a lot of things to do and it's a lot of fun. And that's why a lot of young people, a lot of young professionals who are kind of more like on the single side, and even young married couples will want to live in the downtown area because there are so many things to do. And that's the same here with downtown Dallas. And my wife and I, before we had our kid, before we had our baby, we used to live in Uptown, and Uptown was so much fun. And we would drive to downtown Dallas, we would stay in Uptown, and if we wanted to go outside of the city life, we can go to any suburb because they were kind of all around us because we're like in the center of this huge DFW Metroplex area. And so us living in Uptown Dallas, there were just countless of things. We would go to like Bishop Arts District, we would go to downtown Dallas, we would go to Deep Ellum, and just countless of places to go. And it was a lot of fun because we can explore new places that we've never been to. We can try this restaurant, we can try that coffee shop. And so it was a lot of fun until we had the baby. Once we had the baby, our plans, things have changed, and that was kind of where we had to shift from a major city lifestyle into going to the suburb. And we get calls, texts, emails from people like you who want to move to Dallas. And if you want to move to Dallas, feel free to call, text, email us, whatever you prefer. We're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. The second pro of living in the big city has to do with its diverse job opportunities as well as the industries. Here in Dallas, Texas, like downtown Dallas is where a lot of the jobs are at, a lot of the companies are at. Yes, there are some headquarters moving to like Plano or Frisco, different suburbs, but really for the most part, just like any major city, a lot of people are going to work in downtown Dallas. Now, of course, if your job that, let's say, for example, you're relocating from another state to Dallas, Texas, and your job, your company is in, let's say, for example, Frisco, then there's really no need to live in downtown Dallas, but might as well just live in Frisco or a suburb nearby. But for the most part, a lot of us, our jobs are in downtown Dallas. When it comes with me and my wife, for myself, I am a real estate agent. So obviously I go around anywhere. I go to a lot of suburbs. I don't go too much in downtown. So my lifestyle wouldn't be centered around downtown, but my wife, her work was in downtown Dallas. And that is why we used to live in Uptown, and that was a lot more convenient for her to be able to not commute as much to work. Once we moved to the suburbs, things started changing a bit and we kind of had to shift where she was working, move from downtown to more of a suburb, but we were definitely limited in those options. So you definitely are going to have that issue if you were to live in a suburb and your company is in downtown Dallas. So those are the pros of living in the city. So let's talk about the cons of living in the big city. The very first con I want to share with you has to do with its higher cost of living. As we all know, location is what's going to drive whether your price of your property, your rent, your purchase price is high or if it's low. The further away you go, more to like the suburb lifestyle or the rural lifestyle, you're gonna pay a lot less. But the more urban lifestyle, the more city, the closer you are to the city, the more expensive housing is gonna cost for you. And so that was kind of our dilemma. When we went to live in Uptown first, we were like, you know what? We'd rather live in Uptown just because of the convenience, but then we had to live in a very small apartment. It was about a 1-bedroom apartment and our rent cost over $1,000. Whereas if we were to live in the suburb and we were to live in an apartment, we wouldn't have to spend as much of that rent price. So that's the same with purchase price. If you want to live in downtown Dallas, houses are going to cost a lot. You might have to go from a house to like a condo because there are more condos in downtown Dallas. So you kind of have that pros and cons, but at the end of the day, you're going to have that con of house prices going to be a lot higher. Your living expense are going to be a lot higher. I'm not talking about like supermarket grocery shopping. I'm not talking about really gas. Gas might be a little more expensive in those areas, but overall, when it comes with house prices, rent prices, that's when housing is going to cost a lot more in the downtown area. The next con of living in the big city has to do with this noise, congestion, the traffic, everything that you don't like. When we were in Uptown, the thing I hated was whenever we had to, or at least for me, whenever I had to leave for work and go kind of to the suburb, because that's where a lot of people want to find houses in the suburbs, man, it was jam traffic. There was so much traffic. I just hated it. Leave during rush hour. And then when I come home, at the end of the day, again, congestion, again, traffic jam. And that's one of the things that I hated, like really hated about living in Uptown. And we only lived in Uptown for about, I think like 2 years, maybe 3 years or so. And we're just like, you know what? It's just difficult because of all this traffic. My wife, for her, having that job in downtown Dallas was more convenient for her. And that was a pro of living. But for me, that was the con, because I would leave when everybody was leaving for work and I'd come home when everybody was coming home. Now, for her, my wife, when she was coming home into the apartment, there still was a lot of traffic in those streets just because obviously there's so many cars in downtown. So there was that traffic, but at least she didn't have to commute time-wise as long if she were to live in the suburbs. So you really only know until you actually move out here and then you experience it. But you can go to Google Maps and check out like the streets, see how busy they are during rush hour, during like 8:30 in the morning or so, and then maybe about like 5:30 when everybody comes home from work. So that's kind of the downside of living in the big city. The next con of living in the big city has to do with its potential crime rates being higher than the suburbs. Now, this is just kind of statistically speaking from websites that you can find. You can Google yourself about these crime rates, but it is generally speaking said that in the bigger cities, in downtown areas, you are going to have higher crime rates. That's unfortunate. And this is why a lot of people, they kind of shy away from the big cities because they don't want to be kind of in a dangerous area. And that is one of the reasons why people would say, you know what, I'd rather just live in the suburbs where it's more peaceful, where it's more quiet. So that's kind of the risk that you need to take. Hopefully nothing happens while you're living in downtown Dallas. For my wife and I, we never had any experience living in Uptown. No crime rates, nothing, no crimes, anything of that sort. We didn't have our cars broken. One of the good things about the apartment that we were living in was that our cars were obviously inside the apartment gated garage. So that was kind of comforting to know. If we had left it outside, then that wouldn't have been a good thing. But I did see some car windows smashed when they were left outside, but that was, you know, probably like once out of the 2 years, 3 years that I lived there. So really not a lot, but definitely higher crime rates than the suburbs. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of living in the suburbs. Now, if you want to move to Dallas, feel free to call, text, email us, whatever you prefer. We're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. The very first pro of living in the suburb has to do with its bigger space, more green grass as well in the back. So when we used to live in Uptown and we were in, I think the size, I can't remember exactly, maybe it was like 800 square foot or so, and we were paying like over $1,000 for that small space. When we moved to the suburbs, now we live in a place that's 2,300 square foot. So we're in a place that's 3 times bigger. And if we were to rent our place, I mean, we own our house, so obviously we don't rent it out right now. But if we were to rent our place, we can rent it for a couple $1,000s. And so when we're comparing 800 square foot to 2,300 square foot, that's almost 3 times bigger living in the suburbs versus downtown. And then obviously when we were to, if we were to rent our place, we can rent it for a couple $1,000s, which will be a lot less than how much we were paying in downtown Dallas, or in Uptown Dallas, that is. So that's kind of the space that we get, a lot bigger space here in our place. And not only is the inside of our house bigger, we actually have a backyard. When we were living in an apartment, obviously there was zero backyard. We actually had the fitness gym that I think about maybe like maximum population was like 8 people or so. Capacity was 8 people. I don't know exactly, but they had like, I think 5 machines or so. And it was like probably in a, like size wise, I'd say like a 500 square foot area that was the gym there. So our fitness center. So really small space, but that was like the biggest space that we had in terms of the community. There was no swimming pool in that. Actually, there was a swimming pool, come to think of it. We did have a swimming pool there, so that was kind of the convenience there. But in our house right now, we do pay HOA fees and we have a community pool. So that's kind of cool because we can have birthday parties there. Unfortunately, my baby is not born in the summer, so we can't have birthday parties at the swimming pool because she was born kind of like in the cold season. So that's kind of that downside. But you can definitely, if you were to live in a single family home or even a townhouse, if they have community pools, you can use that space, invite your family members, your relatives, your friends, whoever, and kind of have like a swim party. Depends on the HOA restrictions, of course. But in our house, we don't have a swimming pool inside our backyard, but at least we have one in the community area. But inside our backyard, we do have a pretty sizable backyard. We're actually thinking about changing it into an artificial turf, artificial grass, which we are kind of like talking about that. I've always dreamed about having an artificial grass so my kiddo, my baby can play in the backyard. So when my wife was pregnant, we're dreaming about having our baby inside this backyard with this artificial grass and putting like these jumbo games, right? You know, they got like those board games, like those Connect 4, the big ones, or like Jenga, the big Jenga blocks, things of that sort. That's what we were wanting to do. But then life got to us. Baby was, man, I tell you, taking care of a baby is, oh my goodness, super duper difficult. I didn't know it was this difficult. She's over 4 years old. And so now we can actually catch a breather. We can actually breathe and actually have a lot of fun going to places with her on the weekends. But before she was 4, it was difficult. But when my wife was pregnant, my dream was to have like artificial turf and have all these board games and even have like this, like a putting range in the back and, you know, have her play golf, or maybe not her, maybe I wanted to do that. But that was kind of our dream, or at least my dream. And it was just so difficult. Now that she's over 4 years old, and I have some extra breather to be able to catch my breath, we're pursuing that dream that we've always had. So that's kind of the things that you can do in your backyard, in your house. And that's a good thing about the suburbs. The next pro of living in the suburb has to do with its lower cost of living as well as lower property tax. Let's say, for example, you wanted to buy a place in downtown Dallas. You're looking for like a condo, and it can cost you like $500,000 or so, give or take. It just really depends on what area. It can cost like $600-700. But let's just say you want to buy a property in downtown Dallas, and that kind of property, condo, 1,200 square foot, may get you the same price in the suburb at about square foot, let's say 2,400 square foot for a single family house. So we're talking about not apples to apples, but like apples to oranges, where it's like a huge, big difference where you're getting a condo versus a single family home. And you're getting like a 1,200 square foot versus a 2,400 square foot. Now, not all suburbs are going to be cheap. It just really depends on the suburbs that you want to move to. Now, just to let you know, when it comes with neighborhoods and you have questions about that, you're wanting to move to Dallas and you're like, what neighborhood should I go to, Daniel? Feel free to call, text, email us. We're definitely happy to help you find the best neighborhood that fits your budget and your needs and wants. So that's kind of the difference of living in downtown Dallas. You get a much more expensive property if you wanted the same size, that is, of a property in the suburbs. But you're gonna get, at the suburbs, you're gonna get a lot lower cost. And when the house price is lower, then your property taxes are gonna be lower as well. If we wanted to find, for the value that we got for our home in the suburbs, we wanted to find that house in downtown Dallas, we probably go from a 2,300 single family home, downgrade to maybe like a 1,200 square foot or so condo in downtown Dallas with no really green space. So that's kind of the pros of living in the suburbs. The next pro of living in the suburbs has to do with its safer environments. Like I said, the con of living in downtown Dallas has to do with a higher crime rate, and living in the suburbs, much more safe, statistically speaking, according to the websites. And it's just how it is, right? Because suburbs are supposed to be more peaceful, more quiet. And so that's kind of what you get in the suburbs. For me and my family, having a kid, I felt more at peace living in the suburbs. I enjoyed my city life for about 2 years or so, and I just kind of got tired of it. Too much congestion, too much traffic, too much noise, leaving for work, coming home from work. And it was just like on the weekends, just every day was just terrible. And we would live like in the apartment, and on the top, we would actually hear cars just drive by us, and sometimes we were honking, and that was just kind of terrible. And that is why we definitely like the suburbs much more. And having a kid now, we feel more safe living in the suburbs. So that just really depends on your situation. Some people, they're totally okay with having a kid in downtown Dallas. They're totally fine because there's schools there, there's great schools out there, and they are totally fine. So like I said, that really boils down to a personal preference. I can share my needs, my wants, but yours might be different. And so you might be like, you want to live in downtown Dallas, even though you have family, a kiddo, that's all for you, man. That's great. But some people are like, no, I'd rather live in the suburbs. So it just really depends on every situation. What are the cons of living in the suburbs? Now, the very first con has to do with its longer commutes. Obviously, here in Dallas, it is huge. We got a lot of land here in Dallas, Texas. A lot of cities have already developed, but there are so many more areas, so many more cities, so much land here that we are still developing. And so a lot of people are kind of going into those areas because a lot of development, a lot of growth, homes are definitely going to be cheaper in those areas. But when it comes with the commutes, living in the suburbs, you're gonna have to commute quite longer. Some people, if they live in downtown Dallas and they live in a certain suburbs, their commute can really be 45 minutes or even an hour, depending on where you live. And so that's kind of the downside of living in the suburbs, but you are going to get, like I said, bigger homes, as well as, for the most part, newer homes by living in the suburbs. So if you're okay with the commute, that's okay. I have a client said, you know what, Daniel, we really want a newer home. And so they said they want to live in the suburb, and they're commuting about 1 hour, and they're totally fine with it. They're like, he at least is like, I'm okay with driving 1 hour to work and then 1 hour back home after work. And he just listens to the music, listens to the radio, whatever he does. He's like, you know what, Daniel, I'm okay with the driving. For me, I'm not okay with it. I don't like to drive in the car. I hate commute. I hate long drive. I'm like, get me there in 15, 20 minutes. I don't know why I'm a real estate agent, but it's just that way, where I have to do a lot of driving. But at least a lot of times I'm not really going into downtown Dallas, but I'm going more in the suburbs. For my wife, if she were to live in or she were to work in downtown Dallas, then we might have to go a bit closer to downtown Dallas. But thankfully today, she's not working in the city. She's working in a suburb. And so that's kind of the good side, at least for us. But for some people, that commute is going to be longer, so you might have to think about that. And the very last con of living in the suburb has to do with its lack of entertainment. Now, for people who live in the suburbs, they're gonna be like, oh my goodness, we have so many things to do, so much development here. Sure, I get it. But you know what I also get? I'm from LA. I'm originally from LA. And I'll tell you, LA has so many things to do. Like in LA, you want to go on a road trip to San Diego, bam, you can go there in like 2 minutes or so. If you want to go to, let's say, Las Vegas, 4 or 5 hours drive. You want to go to San Francisco, another 4 or 5 hours drive. You want to go to San Jose, you want to go to Grand Canyon, that's not a 4 or 5 hours drive. But you get my point. So many things to do, like outside of the city of LA, but inside LA. All of those places, like you got Disneyland, you got Universal Studios, you got Six Flags Magic Mountain, you got Getty Museum, you got all these different places that you can visit, and it just never gets boring in LA. Now, when I moved to Dallas, for the beginning, it was great. It's like, oh my goodness, Dallas is so much fun. Uptown was great, downtown was great. And then I moved to the suburbs. I'm like, okay, it's great. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, is that it? Anywhere else to go? Like road trips, or maybe not road trips, but like to other suburbs. And yeah, I've been to all these places. I've been to Legacy West, Stonebriar, I've probably been to Stonebriar Mall literally about maybe, like, I'd say like 80 plus times, because my daughter loves the bookstore. She loves Barnes and Noble. She loves the bookstore there. And so we would go there, and then we go on that carousel, the merry-go-round, the horse, whatever you call that thing, and she would ride that. And she loves Stonebriar Mall. So we've been there so many times. Legacy West, I've probably been to Legacy West maybe like 60 times or so, or more, who knows. And so I've been to all these places. Like, as soon as something pops up, I'm there. For example, Peppa Pig amusement park popped up near Fort Worth, near like North Richland Hills, in that area. And as soon as it opened, we were there. And so we were there when like it just opened, within like a week or two. So we go to new places like very fast as possible, because we've kind of, in a sense, run out of places here in the suburbs. So really, there is going to be a lot of limited entertainment. Now, we can go to downtown Dallas. We can definitely do that. But the drive is going to be about like 45, 50 minutes for us. So that's kind of a far drive. So we prefer not to go there all the time. Once in a while we will. So that's kind of the downside of living in the suburbs. So my question to you is, what is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for more of a peaceful, quiet place? Or are you looking for more of like that nightlife, the entertainment? Or maybe you have kids. Are you kind of wanting to have some space, a bigger house? Or let's say, for example, you're not married and you're like, you know what? I would rather just live, enjoy life, where there's a lot of young professionals, a lot of people who are single. So it really depends on your situation. Like I said, when we had that kid, we were like, oh man, downtown Dallas, or at least uptown Dallas, is going to be hectic. Living in an apartment, in a one-bedroom apartment with a baby, is not feasible. And that's when we said we have to move to a suburb. We have to move to, well, maybe not a suburb, but we have to move to a bigger house, because we can't just be in a one-bedroom. And we wanted her kind of like to sleep by herself in her own bed, but we actually kind of failed on that. We actually sleep with her, or she sleeps with us, that is. And we just had a hard time kind of letting her go and having her cry. We just kind of spoiled her, because she's our only child, and I just didn't want to regret later on life, of course, right? And be like, oh, I should have spent more time with her. So I kind of spoil her. I know we all have that different perspective on how to raise kids, but that was just kind of my point of view. And so by the end of the day, it just really depends on your situation. Do you need more space? How is your price point in terms of finding a place? Are you okay with a small place, or do you want a bigger place? Are you okay with the commute? Where is your work actually? Where is your company? And so all those different factors definitely will play into your situation as to if you want to go into a big city or if you want to go into a suburb. So there you go, the pros and cons of the suburbs as well as the big city. And if you're thinking of moving to Dallas, feel free to call, text, email us, whatever you prefer. We're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. If you like this video, make sure to click that like button. If you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.